I do think that there is a lot breaking down. I absolutely do not think January 6th is the high watermark. Of course not. Do I think something like this will happen again at some point in the next 10 years? Yeah, absolutely I do. If a political system does not come down hard on this kind of anti-constitutional, anti-democratic attempt to overturn the results of an election, what do you do with that? If you can get away with it, you're just going to keep doing it. When people say this is the end of the Roman Empire, that's when I say, I don't think that that's true. This is not a situation where we are entering total state collapse and there's going to be like a kingdom of California. I think that would be overblown. The United States as an entity will continue on. But when you're talking about its political system, what does American democracy look like? What does representative government look like? Participatory government look like? Which the Romans had. For 500 years, the Romans had like a fairly participatory system because those guys did still have to troll for votes. They still needed to win elections in order to get ahead. So I think that there are things that we can talk about in terms of the political system transitioning from representative democracy to an autocratic regime. The United States of America, which is of course modeled on the Roman Republican system, has institutions just like Rome did with the consulship and with the tribunate, where if you just start vesting power and authority in one part of that system, you can keep the window dressing of a House of Representatives and a Senate and a Supreme Court. But we see this in, sort of constitutional dictatorships with the window dressing of democracy, but actually it's just an autocracy. The American political system is well primed to move towards a presidential autocracy, right? The office of the presidency and the executive branch, the institutional framework is there for that office and the White House to become something like a truly imperial presidency, not just as a metaphor, but truly an imperial presidency that will come when these ambitious people and these ambitious politicians really just throw elections out the window and it all just becomes a power grab free-for-all, where power is all that matters and nothing else does. And you take that mentality, which I do see floating around out there, the only thing that matters is power and winning, and an institution like the presidency that is well primed to become an autocratic entity. You put those two things together and you've got an American dictatorship. The Roman Republic, what happened there was it got down to a point where ambitious men who wanted power stopped caring about the various rules, norms, laws that govern their behavior. What happens if you lose an election? What happens if you don't get command of a legion? What happens if your rival is going to put forward a popular bill and give them more votes and more clients than you're going to have, make them more popular than you? How do you respond to that? And for 500 years, they mostly just kind of did it in a round-robin rotational system where everybody was kind of happy. And then round about the 50 or 60 years before Caesar, right, all of that started breaking down. And they started escalating with each other. Rome held elections every single year. There is an election. It's going to go against some candidate. That candidate has on retainer sort of armed gangs. And they said, I'm probably going to lose this vote. So on the day of the election, I need you to come in with your gang and rough people up and beat them up. They had their voting urns, right? Like literal physical voting urns that you would vote into, and they would knock them over basically to wreck the election itself. I'm not going to accept that my rival got command of this potentially lucrative campaign in Greece. I want that campaign for myself. So I'm going to send gangs to try to push his supporters out of the assembly so I can win the vote. After the Revolution of 1830, there is a moment when Lafayette has to go out and stop a mob of people who are going to try to swarm into the National Assembly building because they think that the people inside the National Assembly building are writing a new constitution for France that's more conservative than they would have preferred. And so you did actually have like a mob coming in to stop the national legislature from doing what it was doing. Those things I see happening right now in the United States. I think we all saw something like that happen on January the 6th. Because really what January 6th was about was trying to disrupt the legal transfer of power from one party to another, from one candidate to another, from one person to another. And they're just trying to get in the middle of that and use force and intimidation to stop that process, which is a very different thing from the more famous moments that you see in other revolutions or in other moments of history. But there are many parallels to this. This is unique for this moment in American history. It is not unique at all in terms of world history. When I have looked back at, all through revolutions and all through the history of Rome, the unique factor about Trump is not what he tried to do.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Or that he's a bad ruler, because when people ask me, is he like Louis XVI or is he like, Tsar Nicholas? The answer is those guys were actually, in my opinion, better rulers and actually better politicians, frankly, than Donald Trump was. And those are historically bad rulers. You kind of have to look at what was going on with some of the teenage emperors in Roman history in terms of just how kind of flippantly nonchalant they were with the power that they had at their disposal. And not like sort of the excessive horrors that we know from like TV, like with Caligula or with Nero.
Shall have a new name. Neropolis, city of Nero.
But just in terms of temperamentally and how they wielded the power that they had at their disposal. So what does the quote unquote American Caesar look like, or the American Sulla, or the American Marius? Like somebody who's going to come along and really push the system over and grab a hold of it. I don't know that we've seen exactly what that playbook looks like. But Donald Trump has shown us plain as day how much people are absolutely going to be willing to go along with that if and when it does come along.
And hello friends, we come to the end. Have you subscribed yet? Press the subscribe button and the like button and the share button. Thank you and have a nice day.